So welcome everyone. My name is Francesco Tosoni, and today I'm going to present you this preprint we published recently. So the title is Toward Greener Matrix Operations by Lossless Compressed Formats. So this is a joint work that I made with my former PhD supervisors, Ferragina and Manzini, and then other two university, but I will give further details on the co-authors at the end of these presentations. So let's introduce the topic we basically analyzed. So we are interested in sparse matrix vector multiplications, which is sometimes referred to as SpMV. So this means that we are multiplying a large yet sparse matrix that is called M in this figure and may represent the adjacency matrix of a graph by a vector X that is real valued. And hence the result Y, which is M times X, is also real valued. So this is important in many core areas of scientific computing, for instance, in machine learning inference and graph algorithms and so on. And so we will analyze in this paper not just space and time efficiency of different compressed matrix formats, but even their energy efficiency, and try to explain it and basically provide insights on which parameters of different matrix formats impact on the energy efficiency of different solutions. So where the motivation of this comes from? Well, so as you know, the machine learning algorithms have become very popular, especially with the advent of ChatGPT. And so basically, but these huge models basically required a lot of resources to be trained. So there was a speech last year by the CIO of OpenAI, who said that to train GPT-4, we need $100 million. So this has an impact on energy consumption, so on carbon, as a huge carbon footprint, and also basically yields a lot of costs in terms of monetary costs. And it is also a challenge to store and make these models efficient, as the amount of data that are generated or processed surpassed Moore's law. So at the same time, basically, this is a problem not just for data centers, but even for small edge or IoT devices, because basically to run AI models on these small devices, we need something very efficient, as battery durations is a critical concern. So we want to extend the batteries. And at the same time, we have green computing and green software engineering, who basically came as a solution to address these challenges, this resource burden. But in many senses, green software engineering is still in its infancy. So there's a lack of understanding of which parameter impact on energy efficiency. And many old or oversimplified legacy energy complexity models fail to capture real-world dynamics. So with this paper, we are trying to provide more insights that may be useful to software engineers to choose the right formats to deploy their applications. So as you will see, we are testing two different platforms. So on one side, an Intel Xeon Gold, which is a multi-core machine with 56 logical cores. And then we are measuring energy consumption through ArrayPL, which is a energy profiler. And then we will compare and repeat and compare these experiments on a small edge single board computer, a Raspberry Pi. And in this case, we are measuring the energy consumption, so the supply current, through a benchtop multimeter. This means via hardware. And so which are the research questions, the main research questions of we are exploring? So we want to know how compression affects space-time, but also energy. And we will see that while, for instance, some matrix formats are more space efficient, other, for instance, allow to save orders of magnitude of energy consumption. And then, so there's basically a prevailing assumption in computer science that energy efficiency is related to time efficiency. So the faster we complete a task and the more efficient we are, since then we can put the device on low power mode or save energy in other ways. But we will see that basically optimizing time and energy are not necessarily the same, as sometimes it's better to slow down the application to achieve better energy consumptions. And then finally, we ask ourselves which runtime metrics impact energy the most. And we will try to explain energy efficiency by analyzing the number of cache accesses as the number of threads increases in our application. So let's now get down into the compressed matrix formats that we analyzed. So we basically compared 3 families of solutions for large binary matrices. So they are all of them quite recent contributions in literature. So the first one is called Zuckerli, which is an evolution of WebGraph, and basically was developed by a Google team. And then we have the K-square tree, which is less compressed than Zuckerli, but allows for more operations. And finally, the repair compressed matrices that I developed 2 years ago during my PhD, and basically exploit grammar compression to achieve space and also time savings. So let's see if all of these matrix formats allow also for energy savings. And so all of these formats I described are lossless matrix formats. That means that compared to lossy solutions, which are very common, for instance, in machine learning literature, for instance, such as low precision storage. So it's common to use FP32 rather than double, or for instance, other lossy solutions are sparsification or quantization. Now there are successful methods, for instance, even for LLMs who quantize models using just binary or ternary values. But the problem with these lossy techniques that are so common is that they need each time careful and manual applications, as they may impair in principle the quality in terms of accuracy of the model of the subsequent operations. So these lossless solutions that I am presenting do not affect at all the quality of the model. And in a sense, they can provide a better automated alternative, as they are data independent and do not need any a priori knowledge about the input data. And it would be even a good idea to combine the best of the 2 approaches. For instance, starting with a binary and ternary state-of-the-art quantized model, and then apply a lossless compression strategy on top of it. So with this lossless stage, we are not losing precision anymore, but we are optimizing other metrics such as space, time, or energy. And another feature of these matrix formats I'm presenting is that they are computation friendly for matrix vector multiplications. This means that we are not just saving space on disk. This is rather easy, but these approaches for compressions also enable efficient operations at runtime. So we can exploit the property of the compressed data to carry out operations directly on the compressed representation without any prior decompression, and in time proportional to the uncompressed data. And we have strong theoretical guarantees that tells us that basically the time performances are always proportional to the size of the compressed representation. So in a sense, this is a win-win strategy. As the more we compress, the faster we are. So we are saving both resources. And so let's get started with the first matrix format, which is Zuckerli. And so basically, Zuckerli and WebGraph, which is an older and more well-known matrix format, were developed for the web. So the idea was basically to exploit the redundancies of web graphs. So let's consider this image that you see on the right-hand side. So this is an adjacency matrix representing a web graph, so obtained through crawling. And basically, the sides of this matrix represent different URLs, which are sorted by inverse domain. So URLs that are within the same domain often share outgoing links. So it's quite easy to compress them by exploiting similarity of these adjacency links. And basically, the first solution is in this sense, who achieved very good compression ratios, was developed roughly 20 years ago in Milan, and basically exploiting the so-called copy property of similar and adjacent adjacency lists. And basically, it was initially developed in Java, but then was ported in C++, and recently the original author implemented it in Rust. In this paper, we are analyzing Zuckerli, which is a more recent contribution in this field, which applies more sophisticated compression techniques on top of the web graph format, so achieving better compression ratios. And though a bit slower in the compression, it yields quite comparable decompression performances also. And so I don't go much into details of how Zuckerli work, but just to give an idea of why this is compression friendly for matrix to vector multiplication. So imagine that 15 and 16 are two URLs namely two pages in the web, which are within the same domain. So for instance, two pages of the University of Pisa. And basically, it is common to find a similar outgoing link in these pages. So you see that 15, 16, and 17 are present in both 15 and 16. So the idea is that when we have 15 already represented, rather than represented 16 explicitly from scratch, we can copy lists or basically blocks from the previous one, which is 15, and is referred as a reference list for 16. So we're just storing the deltas, the differences, which in this case are 22 and others, rather than copying, representing the list from scratch. And basically, this is exactly what we need for the matrix vector multiplication, because if you think that we are multiplying, so the classical row by column multiplication, when we have the result of row 15 by the input vector, then the result of the row 16 by the same input vector is very similar. We don't need to recompute it from scratch, but it's enough to add or remove deltas from the solution for 15. And in this way, so this was the first to notice this were a researcher from Chile and Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. And so Gonzalo Navarro was one of the authors, I remember. And basically in this, they applied it for WebGraph in their conference paper. So a small independent contribution is that in this presentation, we implemented this computation-friendly multiplication for Zuckerli. And so this may be a small contribution of independent interest. So let's move to the k-square tree, which is the second compressed format we are analyzing. So this one is usually achieves less compression ratios compared to Zuckerli, but allows for more operations. So the idea is that since it's called k-square tree, we basically represent each binary matrix as basically as a tree, where the root of the tree that you see on the right hand represent the whole matrix, and each node has exactly k-square children, and this k-square children correspond to the basically submatrices in a row major fashion of the initial matrix. So in this case, so it's rather common to set k equal 2, and then we have a particular case of the k-square tree, which is called also quad tree, and basically consists of k of 4 quadrants. And you see that as in this very tiny example, we write 1 whenever the submatrix is not full, and we write 0 when the submatrix contains only zeros. So in this case, looking at these 4 submatrices, which are 2 by 2, the first one is not empty, then the second and the third are empty. We write 0, and then we write 1 for the last. So whenever we write a 0, we stop the recursion. We don't split the matrix anymore. And instead, when the matrix is not empty, we get down to the next level. So we split again the submatrices in 4 parts, and then write 1 or 0 depending on the content. So in this way, we are exploiting the clusters of 1s and clusters of 0s as well. For efficient representation. So this is a bigger matrix. So in this example, so these edges that are highlighted here represents those that are visited to extract a line. So in this case, we are extracting the adjacency list for page 10, and we need to percolate all of these basically edges. Since each node has k square children, then there's a guarantee that however the data are distributed, the height of k square tree is always log kn. And we are not much interested in access to single cells, but to carry out matrix vector multiplications, which is basically the goal of this paper, we just need to perform a visit in whatever fashion to the tree. So we need to visit each leaf of the tree, and whenever we add a 1, we find a 1. We know that there's a 1 in the input matrix, and then this information is enough to carry out matrix vector multiplications. So there are some implementation which are made available on the web. So the original one is hosted in the University of A Coruña in Spain. But then there are also other implementation available, one in SDSL, which is a library for compressed data structure. And then recently there's a new implementation in DERSI, which was developed by the University of Chile. And in this paper by the University of Chile, they basically demonstrated that it's possible to carry out matrix vector and matrix also multiplications on top of this k-square tree. So we tested all of them and basically found that the original one had the best performances, and then selected that one. So let's get fast into the last basically matrix format, which is repair. And basically here, first of all, so this is a general framework that works even for real valid matrices. So in general, we extract all different values and storing them in an array V. In this way, we exploit sparsity. And in this case, since the matrix is binary, in V contains only 1. And then basically we generate a sequence S, which contains basically pairs of indexes in V and columns. So in this case, and you see that we have 2, 1, since basically 4.1 is the second value of V and appears in column 1. And then the next one is 3,2, since this is the third value V and appearing in column 2, and so on and so forth. And then we append this dollar as row delimiter. So we have 5 rows and then 5 row delimiters. At this point, this sequence S can be compressed using a grammar compression. So we apply repair, which is an iterative algorithm that works by substituting repetitions of pairs within the input sequence. So imagine, as in this small example, we have AB in our sequence S. Then we can substitute it with R1, which we call it non-terminal. And then since R1, we have it twice, we can substitute it with R2. And this substitution, we keep substituting up to the point we get R4, which represents the whole input string. And basically, at this point, we can apply this grammar compression to S, finally obtaining a sequence of non-terminals, which each of them representing an input row, and a set of rules R, which expand to the rows of the input matrix. So in this example, you see that N1 or better, N4, which is the first non-terminal, expands to these 3 non-terminal symbols, which represent the first input row. At this point, we can completely get rid of S. We don't need it anymore. We just keep V, the vocabulary, the final string C, and the set of rules R. And then now that we have this matrix compressed one, we can use it many times, for instance, for inference operations. So imagine we have an input vector X, then we want to carry out Y equal M times X. We just need a single scan over the rules of the grammar. And then whenever we have a non-terminal symbol, we basically run a multiplication. And when we have to evaluate the contribution to the multiplication of a non-terminal symbol, we run a sum. And finally, the result is given by the last non-terminals appearing on the left-hand side of the rules. And this whole thing can be carried out in extra space that is proportional to the number of rules and time proportional to the number of rules and the final string C. So everything is proportional to the compressed size, and it's basically computation friendly again. So this scheme will be even more general. So by doing the dual basically operations, we can also carry out left matrix vector multiplications. So, and for repair, actually, we have 3 variants. So I don't get much into details because probably I don't have time, but the idea is that we have more compressed or less compressed physical representation for the final string in particular, and also the rules are, which allow for different space-time trade-offs. And so let's see how we basically set up our experiments. So basically, as application, we chose PageRank, which is a classical algorithm in graph analysis. So basically, it's an algorithm that developed by Google to assess the importance of each page in the web. So, and can be modeled with this equation that basically it represents a Markov chain. So as you see on the yellow highlighted part, we have a matrix vector multiplication. And we start with an initial state, which is referred as pi 0, and basically which supposes an equal distribution of probabilities on all nodes. And then each time we run this multiplication up to the point we reach a steady state that represents the importance measured as quantity and qualities of incoming link to each web page. And so as for the data sets, we used mostly web graphs, which were retrieved by the authors of web graphs, so a group in Milan, and were made available on the suite Sparse matrix collection. But for corroborating our solutions, we also consider some social networks just to see if our solutions are more general. In particular, we have a graph of movie actors and another one of friendships in a social graph. And so these are the specification for the multi-core architecture and the Raspberry Pi. So in one case, we have almost 400 gigabytes of RAM. The other instead is quite resource constrained as we have only 4 giga. And then clearly cache sizes are much different. So in one case, we have almost 1 megabyte, and in the other, we have 100 kilobyte of cache. And for the Raspberry Pi, we limit to the smallest data sets, namely those which have at most 10 million nodes. And as for the code setup, so first we transpose the matrix, because if you remember in PageRank, we have a left matrix vector multiplication. Instead, it's common practice for computing PageRank to transpose to that equation in order to transform left multiplication into right ones. So we perform this transposition, and then we compress each matrix using Zuckerli, the chi-square tree, and the repair. And finally, storing the out degree of each node for the sake of normalization of each row of the input matrix. Then we carry out 100 iterations of PageRank, repeating it for each data set. And as for the code, we implemented everything in C and C++ and compiled with the O3 optimization flag, since this so it's the highest available optimization for GCC and G++ compilers, and also so there's literature demonstrating that also yields energy savings. So to exploit parallel architecture, so we implemented a data parallel solution for all our codes. So this is quite easy. It's embarrassingly parallel. We just split in row blocks. In this example, they are 3 row blocks, and then we carry out independent matrix vector multiplication for all of them with a small reduce basically operations in the end. And as anticipated for the power measurement, we have IPL for the Intel multi-core architecture. And so we are measuring the energy at package level, which means cores, memory controllers, and also other components. So this was adopted in a basically a plethora of tools for energy measurements, such as Scaphander or Code Karman and Green Matrix tool. And then we are collecting also other metrics, such as the number of cycles, instruction, or cache hits and cache misses using perf. And instead, for the sake of the Raspberry Pi, we are measuring the energy consumption via hardware using a benchtop multimeter, and basically using a sampling rate of 3 Hz. So we believe that this is enough to reconstruct in an accurate way the signal, the current signal. And so let's get now showing into the results of our analysis. So first of all, we see basically that on disk, Zuckerli is the most compressed solution. So in this table, you see how many bits we need for each edge. And after Zuckerli, chi-square tree comes second, and then all the grammar compressed variants for each data set. And just to understand how much these data sets are compressed, we compared the compression ratios for gzip and xz. basically, and we saw that gzip is comparable to Zuckerli. XZ is more compressed, but gzip is an order of magnitude, would be an order of magnitude slower than Zuckerli for running matrix vector multiplication. So this is just for backup and not for any runtime operations. And XZ, it's even smaller, it's even slower than gzip, and so it will not be feasible to carry out matrix vector multiplications on it. And so I'll show you now the space-time performances at runtime. So in these plots, you see on the x-axis the bits per edge that we need for the memory at runtime, and then on the y-axis the elapsed time, namely the completion time. So Zuckerli, again, which is the blue one, is the more space efficient on many datasets, and even the k-square tree, which is the red one. So different dots represent different parallelism degree, thread count, and we see that Zuckerli degrades for much faster than the k-square tree. Instead, the grammar compressed solutions, which are the other dots on the right-hand side, are faster but less compressed. And so in this graph, we have time and energy. So again, we have the thread count on the x-axis, namely the parallelism degree, and different dots correspond to different thread counts, different colors to different matrix formats. So the dashed line is the basically the time efficiency, while the solid lines are basically the energy. So first of all, we see that the time scales, it's easier to scale to reduce time than to reduce the energy consumption when scaling an application. And then we also notice, particularly notably for Zuckerli, which is basically the matrix formats on the top, that while, for instance, in UK 2005, which is on the right-hand side, while the energy consumption, the time, sorry, keeps decreasing at least to 40 threads, the energy does not scale anymore past 16 threads. So this means that the optimal number of threads for time and energy may differ. And for instance, it may be useful in some scenarios to reduce the number of threads, so slowing down the application to have better energy performances. So this can suggest multi-criteria approaches where, for instance, we select the fastest solution given some energy constraints. So to understand, to have a better understanding of how basically different metrics impact energy performances. So I'm concluding. So this is just a last insight. So we analyzed the instruction throughput for these different algorithms. So in this case, so the k-square tree, which is the red one, and Zuckerli, which is the blue one on the bottom part, so are the most efficient in terms of instruction throughput, but still they are slower because they have more instructions to process as they are more compressed. And we see that they basically, their efficiency decreases as the number of threads increases. So we see a monotonic trend for all of them. While for the other three, which are the grammar compressed solutions, we see that there's a non-monotonic pattern. So for instance, initially they improve up to 8 threads, then they lose throughput up to 24 and so on. So to gain understanding on how this works, so we counted the number of cache accesses in L3 and L1D. This stands for data caches. And so in this case, different groups of bars correspond to different thread counts. And for each group of bars, we have the 5 algorithms. So let's focus on Zuckerli, which is the first algorithm, so the most compressed. We see that in L3, more or less as the number of threads increases, we have less accesses in cache 3. So this suggests that Zuckerly becomes more cache efficient, as you see also that in L1 we have an increase in cache accesses. So this means that there's a better exploitation of the cache hierarchy, as small caches are faster to access, and then there's a reduction of latencies when processing instructions in CPU. And focusing on L3 accesses, we see that there's an initial decrease up to 16 threads, followed by a rise again, and then a decrease, and the final rise for 48 threads. And this it's strongly correlates to the instruction throughput that we notice for Zuckerly, which follows exactly this reduction, increase, and reduction, and final increase. And so this means that basically when we are accessing smaller caches and basically there are reduced latencies, and basically time and also energy performances increase. So we notice this even for the K-square tree, and this we have even a stronger correlation here, as up to 32. So we have initially more cache accesses in L3, and basically the instruction throughput decreases, and then we have an improvement and the final decline again. And so finally, for the Raspberry Pi, we substantially collected results that confirm those for the multi-core server. And we just noticed that the K-square tree in this case is always more time efficient than Zuckerly. And for Zuckerly, we notice a more convex behavior. So remember that also the Raspberry Pi has only 4 cores, and the last dot here represents the execution with 8 threads. So we are using more threads than the available core. So this suggests in general that our energy performance result apply not just for servers, but also for small edge devices. And as we saw from previous slides, so there's quite a remarkable difference between Zuckerly, for instance, and the grammar-based solution, which are basically the fastest. And this impacts also on energy efficient that has an order of magnitude difference. So by selecting different compressed formats, we can save a lot of energy. And so just concluding finally, so as just said, by selecting the appropriate compressed representation, we can handle large data set even on resource compressed devices. And by this careful selection, we can save at least 1 or even 2 orders of magnitude across different platforms. The K-square tree among all tested solutions seems to be the fastest, as fast as the grammar-based solution, and also quite comparable to Zuckerly, which is the most compressed. So we saw that optimizing time and energy presents partially different challenges, as the optimal number of threads may differ between time and energy. And we also saw that the number of accesses in L1 and L3 caches may impact on the overall time and energy performances. So these are just some direction for future work. So we want to study, for instance, application others than PageRank. So an idea would be, for instance, to implement on edge or even IoT devices compressed data structures, which are widely used in many applications, such as the FM index or rank and select data structure, and then analyze the impact of this compressed solution in terms of energy or in terms of time and space optimization. And then also test with machine learning data sets, for instance, combining lossy state-of-the-art solutions such as quantization with these lossless solutions that do not impact the accuracy of the models. So for transparency and reproducibility, we basically made available the datasets in the a GitLab repository. And so these are the co-authors. So Giovanni Manzini and Paolo Ferragina were my supervisor for my PhD. So the green ones is a group of basically engineers specializing in digital signals and sampling from the University of Perugia, and then Philip Bille comes from the Danish Technical University and is also an algorithmist. And so just to keep up to date with our research, you can scan this QR code. So the first one is my research group, and then the other two. And yes, so I conclude here my presentation. So thank you for your attention.